Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the singer and performer Ellen Foley, who has a new solo album out titled Fighting Words. This came out on Urban Noise Music. Also, just to tell you, she is the vocalist on Meat Loaf's 50 million selling album Bat Out of Hell, and also sings on the classic song Paradise by the Dashboard Light. Anyway, this is the interview. After several minutes of casual but nice chat, we got down to that very exciting subject that was the recording of the new album Fighting Words, and the period of lockdown, which, let's face it, we're going to talk about for probably a few more years. Well, possibly. Anyway, look, Ellen, take it away. Tell us when this all started to happen.
It was pre-lockdown. Gosh, oops, sorry. I think, it took us, a couple, maybe 3 years from from when Paul Foglino and I started. He was bringing me songs, and we started to, make some demos on our own. And then we decided what we were going to do. And he did basic tracks, drums, and bass, and then sent them out to the other musicians, and Ulla Hedwig, who's the singer with me on the record, then he brought them all to me, and we actually did them separately, even pre-pandemic, because it's kind of the way you can do it now. I mean, my vocals were done in my living room.
Yes, everyone's got their own little sort of setup and studio, which is already makes things much easier.
Mm-hmm.
But then during this sort of the unfortunate timing that was the pandemic and the lockdown for the last 2 years nearly, I mean, did much of it change, or did you add any more material into the album during that sort of gestation period?
No, it was all there, and sort of, we put it out, I guess, last August. So it was in the works. It was, cooking during the pandemic, but no, we didn't change anything.
Yes.
But I think that the record, sends out kind of a sense of unity, and it's got some very, I think, uplifting moments to it that just coincidentally happen to work for the time we're in. I think it's pretty pertinent and relevant, the stuff that we're seeing on the music.
Well, there was one particular song which sort of stood out a lot when I was playing it, which is Fill Your Cup, which seems particularly, yes. And I suppose, that's the one that seems to sort of resonate a lot with the emotional sort of feeling at the moment, as a collective consciousness. So that was kind of an interesting one. And again, there was kind of lots of songs about hope and family and community that sort of come out on the album. So I was just kind of curious how that felt when, the timing of the release and also what's happened in the last 2 years, which has slightly discombobulated our nation, really, hasn't it?
All our nations, yes. No, but the song, I do feel that Fill Your Cup is a, the heart, sort of an emotional centerpiece to it, most definitely.
Yes.
And it really plays on my sort of the maturing I've gone through, certainly since my career began, and I was just, a kid, who was out for myself, wanted to be a rock and roll person and have a good time and all that, get a lot of attention. Well, I still want attention, so that part hasn't changed. But I'm a mother. I'm older. I've been married for a long time, so I know. To me, it's important that the sharing of that kind of message on that song. Yes, I always picture, in that song, life as a long table, where you can keep bringing people in to join.
And
that's how it feels to me.
And as an artist and a singer and performer, does it sort of help with sort of both going through your own sort of experience and decades and thinking, God, this is what I was like in my teens, this is like I am in my 20s. And obviously when a lot of people were starting out in music, there wasn't any sort of blueprint of what happens. But now we see what happens to people like the Rolling Stones who are still performing. We sort of heard David Bowie's last album that he released almost the day before he passed away, Black Star. Does having those kind of people and those, other artists about, does that sort of also help you sort of navigate a little bit about what you can also do as well with sort of releasing albums and sort of staying in it? Because obviously, they're alongside people like, Iggy Pop, people who've sort of forging still on, aren't they? Who were there at the, not quite the start of popular music, but were quite close, really. And I just wondered if that kind of also helped, with bringing out this new album as well, and sort of encouraged you to say, no, I'm going to go back out and do it again.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I love that, rock and roll was always, rock and roll started by and for the youth. And then the youth has grown up and gotten older, and the fact that some of these older artists are doing it is absolutely inspiring.
Yes.
I look at Mick Jagger and I say, boy, I better get off my ass and do some push-ups or something, or dance around a little bit. My God, what that boy does. It's amazing.
It is quite extraordinary, actually.
Yes.
And with
But it's absolutely inspiring. And what's really pissing me off is that stupid Paul McCartney, and now who was it? Somebody else is saying how was it Roger Daltrey, or saying, oh, the Stones are just a blues band. I mean, I'm sorry, but they're a blues band who's still out there.
Yes.
What are you doing? And it's not to say that the Stones are their only credit to this moment is that they're still alive and jumping around. They have amazing songs. What they've done in their career is just as powerful and just as relevant as those other bands.
Yes.
And I think that's so tacky. I don't believe, why is everybody coming out to pile on them right now? It's so tacky.
Yes, I completely agree, because I know there was about 10, 20 years ago, a lot of journalists would say, kind of write an article just to make a name for themselves, saying, why are they still doing it? They should stop now. They shouldn't be headlining Glastonbury, and they shouldn't, they should let the young people in. And it's a bit like, well, it's not one or the other. It could be both. And they're just a journalist. So I was really surprised when I saw those comments from various other musicians from their decades.
Contemporaries of it.
Contemporary, indeed.
And I'm sure, people who have been friends of theirs their whole lives, that McCartney, that the Stones and the Beatles were friends. It was always like, well, in spite of what might have been any kind of manufactured contention between them, they were friends. But maybe it's in terms of who knows, maybe he's just an old man who doesn't know what he's saying.
Yes,
he's not up there jumping around for 2.5 hours, so maybe he doesn't have the energy. Maybe he's going a little soft all around.
And so going back to the album that's come out, there's another track on it which is kind of a curious little number, which is the one, I Call My Pain by Your Name. Can you kind of explore, kind of elaborate a little bit on sort of the sentiment behind that, although the title gives it away, really. But I mean, just kind of how that came about, and yes, your feelings for it.
Well, I think it. Paul had been writing for a long time. Paul Foglino. He had a band here in New York called the Five Chinese Brothers, and the vast majority of these songs were written for me. But I think that was around. During the Five Chinese Brothers. And it's a country song with the country sentiment, what is that one song? You're tearing me apart, you're breaking my heart, so fuck you, that kind of, it's that, that's a good old, but I love it, I'm so glad he gave it to me and I had the opportunity, because I love to sing. I love to sing the country stuff, and I'm seeing that even some of my other stuff, the more rock stuff, that there is kind of the inflection that country that I might have heard in country, and that I'm bringing to it. Yeah,
Yes.
I love singing it because, in country you can really spread out. You can really use your muscles. It's big. It's the big vocal, and the big emotion.
Yeah, it's interesting because the album's quite varied, isn't it? There's some sort of rock songs, there's some sort of slightly more poppy songs, and then there's the sort of the country kind of quality as well. So you must quite enjoy sort of being able to sort of go to so many different sort of genres in one album.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But, having said that, I don't feel that it feels like it's some sort of Frankenstein's monster. I think it all feels like it fits together, even though there are, yeah, I guess different genres, but most of the songs are written by one person.
Yes.
But there's the cover, there's Steinman, which fits within my oeuvre, as it were, because it's a song I've been singing since I was 25 years old. Heaven Can Wait, and say like I found a love. It's an R&B thing. Stuff that's so sort of entrenched and in your DNA. You throw it in with Paul's songs, and it all seems to fit together.
Yes. Well, I know that David Bowie would always, when he started to get it really together, which was in the 70s more than the 60s work he did, he often had a really good sidekick. He had Mick Ronson, or he had Nile Rodgers, and throughout his
Uh-huh.
decades, he's always, Earl Slick. Do you find that working with, Paul is equally, is that person that you really need, with your musical journey?
Even more so, because you see Bowie, he wrote his own songs and these guys implemented it. So,
Yeah.
but Paul is the songwriter, so it's definitely 50-50. I'm his sidekick and he's my sidekick,
Yes.
as it were. Even though he would hate that because he never wants to be out front. He's so happy right now because, yeah, when we've had bands before, he's played the guitar and he's done vocal stuff. Well, now we have two guitar players and he's playing the bass. So whenever I ask him anything, or what do you think, or say this, or he goes, "Hey, I'm just a bass player. I'm just the bass player." I said, "How long are you going to hide behind? I'm just the bass player." He's totally self-deprecating and I'm unassuming and all those annoying things.
Yes, it's far too easy because you have got an absolutely kicking band on this, haven't you? The musicians
Yes.
you've got are absolutely on it. Is this a band that he's put together himself, or is this one that you've worked with before?
Let's see. For the most part, it was people. Yeah, yeah. It was pretty. That was the band that we had in that point in time. I think we only have two people right now from that configuration. We have Paul and we have Slim Simon, who played on the record. Who played? I just think he played brilliantly on the record. But we have a different drummer and our keyboard players, a musical director, a guy named Charlie Roth, and a different guitar player. Plus, we have a girl singer who's I did the duet with Carla, and so she's singing those parts, and she's got a lot of personality. Her name's Emma Craig. She's great.
Yes, because I think Charlie's worked with Suzanne Vega before, hasn't he? And he's worked with probably
Yeah, I
millions
mean
of
he's
people.
been and he's been everywhere. I mean from Rick Derringer and then with Garland Jeffries for a long time, and yeah, he played with Ozzy. But yeah, with me, he's musical director and he does keyboards, but he's also a drummer. He's a bass player. He's just brilliant
Yes.
guy.
And as we're sort of slowly getting older, or quite quickly getting older, as it sometimes feels, does like how to sort of interpret people's music is kind of quite interesting, because obviously there's a point where a band can no longer do it, and then there's a cover band. But with dear old Meat Loaf, there was this amazing musical that I went to see twice in London. Did you, and it was such a
Uh-huh.
fantastic stage musical. Did you go and see it yourself?
I actually saw it in Toronto.
Right, when it first kind of kicked off.
Yes, yes. But it's playing over in England again. It's touring in England again now, right?
Yeah, so there was a
Yeah.
residency they had in London for several months, if not a year. Then then they went around Europe and I think Australia.
Then it's going around.
And now they brought it
Yeah.
back again.
No,
And did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy watching it on the stage?
I loved it. It was fabulous. It was just great. I mean, the production was great. A guy, I don't think he's not doing it anymore, I know, but a guy, Andrew Pollack, played the lead when I saw it, and I thought he was kind of astounding. He's right now, I've been watching him on Facebook. They did a musical version of The Grinch Who Stole Christmas out in
Yes.
San Diego. So he's the Grinch with he's a brilliant performer. But yeah, obviously he's not in it. I had a blast in Big Bad Out of Hell musical. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, well, I sort of also became kind of amazed with Andrew because he just seemed so,
Yes.
I don't know, he just encapsulated, yeah, he sort of managed to get that part so well. And then I saw it one night with his understudy and it was good, but he on paper, he probably didn't sort of seem like he would be that amazing, but on the stage when it kicked off and the big bang happened and it started, it was just
Oh yeah.
stunning.
Wow, right?
And
Right.
Christine as well, his sidekick as well at that time. So I think the parents are still doing it. They've come back and are going to be touring the country. But the couple are definitely doing other things from what I've seen on social media. So there you go. But I thought it was just an interesting way of being able to take the music of this kind of such a legendary songwriter and performer, Jim Steinman and Meat Loaf, and then sort of make something kind of interesting. Because if there was a tribute band, I'd probably not really be bothered, but to see a stage musical was really spectacular. So I thought,
right, because a tribute band would be like, it's still in the same genre, like a rock and roll show with a guy singing the Meat Loaf stuff. But these are characters, and within a play, so it you don't feel like you're going to compare it to seeing Meat Loaf on stage.
Yes,
singing
and there's none of that embarrassing thing of whether the band are going to try and dress up as the original band, which is often quite embarrassing. I've seen a few, and it's like I wish they didn't do that because they obviously.
I know.
It's best to just go out as you are. But one thing that's always kind of curious because I was born. This isn't that exciting though, but I was born in '64. So my early musical moment in life was the early '70s of glam, of Sweet Slade, Gary Glitter. But luckily, David Bowie was my first single and first love. What was your musical awakening? Because mostly we have a moment when we're at a certain age, sometimes 5, sometimes 10, where something happens and you think, God, that's just amazing. Did you have one of those moments?
Well, that young, 5 or 10?
Well, or you might, just that moment that you might have seen or heard something on the radio, your parents were playing something.
Well, I think it was the girl groups. It was definitely the girl groups, and the record. The first single I ever bought was "He's So Fine" by it wasn't the Chiffons, I'm not sure. And so it was all those kind of bands and the Four Seasons, but then it progressed into the Detroit stuff, the Temptations, the Four Tops, and then it got into, that took it into the the 60s where, the Beatles, but the Stones were always really my bands. And then the American, the great rock and roll bands and artists in the 60s and 70s.
So when you sort of came through, like seeing the 60s happen, and it unfolded, and there was, obviously you saw sort of bits of the early Beatles, and then you saw the psychedelic period, and then it came to the, the 69, 70, where suddenly, Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin died. What was that like as a sort of a teenager, sort of thinking, my God, or, just at that point of seeing people who had been so influential for about 5 years, sort of just suddenly pass, and then a new decade appears and it feels like the party's got a bit messy. And Charles Manson, obviously. What was it like for you at that stage?
I think I hate to say it, but I don't remember being like all brokenhearted. I was young enough that I knew that there was going to be more to come
Yes.
You
Which is,
know, I mean, I loved Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. I was a fan for a long time, but then she just got too burnt out in that voice. No, I mean, and it's terrible, but the whole Manson thing, was there was kind of a ghoulish fascination about the whole thing.
yes.
But you know,
When
I
did
guess
you?
I'm saying that I was okay with
Yes,
all of that.
you were cool.
I was cool.
It was just happened. It just happened. But then,
Yeah.
obviously, when did you start to discover your voice and sort of performing? When did this sort of start to emerge?
Well, that happened very young. I think when I was in grade school, grammar school, um, did plays and sang. In the choir, we started to do musicals there, and then in high school, I did a lot of theater, musical stuff, and in college, I had my first band, a band called Big Jive. And I had a boyfriend who was the guitarist, of course, and I was the girl singer.
Yes.
But I started I started singing with Barbara Streisand very young. I loved all the Streisand stuff, so sang with her. I would say my two biggest um, influences are Mick Jagger and Barbara Streisand. Which I guess makes sense when you see how I sing and what kind of performer I am.
Yes, absolutely. That is, that all makes complete sense, doesn't it really? And then
Hmm.
sort of musically, obviously there was sort of fashions, there was that sort of West Coast rock, and then there was, I don't know, a lot of kind of country tinged music as well. Then we had progressive rock with those super group bands like Yes and Genesis, and then punk came along. What was your sort of musical journey at that kind of stage? Because obviously were you trying to sort of make music a career in the sort of the mid 70s?
Um, I didn't presume to think I was going to have a musical career because I was like I had that band, but then I was doing theater and but in '76 is when I met Meat Loaf and Jim doing a theater piece, a show called the National Lampoon Show. And
Yes.
yeah, it was original stuff, but it was all rock stuff. And Jim was a musical director, and at the time he was writing the record, the Bad Out of Hell record. And I was there. He liked my singing. He loved my singing, so he wrote Paradise, and that sort of catapulted the whole concept that I would be able to take, because I have done musicals, I have done musical theater, but I think I have the most unique part of what I can do is in rock and roll. A lot of what I do in what I've done in musicals, I think other people can do it, but I think my voice is pretty, as like I said, unique for rock and roll. So I was able to, through that record, to go on and believe that I would be able to have the career in music, to have the career in rock and roll.
Yes, absolutely. Because the late 70s and early 80s, you certainly really get sort of a lot of traction at this point. And you're also working with some major players like Ian Hunter and Mick Ronson, who,
Yeah.
obviously had been with Bowie and the Spiders from Mars. Did you have a lot of kind of encouragement at that stage of this is, you're going to be sort of on this road and this is going to be it for the next 5, 10 years?
I did. I credit a guy named Steve Popovich, who was um, his record label put out he discovered Meat Loaf and Steinman, and his record label put out Bad Out of Hell, and then he took me on and signed me, and I did 3 albums on the Cleveland International / Epic Records. So I had a lot of support.
Yes, that was quite interesting. The Cleveland International Epic, that rolls off the tongue, doesn't it, so
Uh-huh.
easily? But then, you know, at the height, you know,
Not
we.
really.
I know, but then the one of the great sort of moments in life is the sort of follow-up album, Spirit of St. Louis, with the members of the Clash. So yeah, that's just an amazing sort of marriage, isn't it? Really, to happen, because obviously they'd had so much kind of attention with, you know, their first 3 or 4 albums, and they were sort of looked upon as these sort of demigods of the punk world. What was that kind of relation? How did you get to meet each other, by the way? How did that come together?
Um, well, I guess, right after my first album, I was doing some touring in Europe, and I was played a venue there. Was there a place called The Venue? Could that be right?
That could be
I
right,
don't know.
yes.
What?
Yes, I think it is right, yes.
But it was a nice, very nice sort of a theater. And so I went there a couple of nights before my show to see something, and I met Mick Jones there. And then, that's how it all started. Met him and got involved with the whole bunch.
I know, that's quite a band you had there. So
Uh-huh.
completely different to the first album. Can you remember much about the recording process? Because this was done in Wessex Studios, London, wasn't it? So that was quite
Yeah.
different. And obviously the material had all been written mostly by, you know, Strummer and Mick Jones. So what was the kind of the general
Uh-huh.
vibe of that sort of period like for you?
Well, it was a shock to the system because, I had just been born, into this with one album, and was on that trajectory, and then went and started working with them, and it was a whole other thing, and I adapted, uh but it probably wasn't what I would have been doing if I had not have been at that club that night and met him, and it all, I started going out with him, and it became that part of my life. No, but I really like the way they worked because it was very improvisational. Things just happened, like, they would, and experimental is a better word for it. Experiment with sort of different sounds, and obviously, sort of some of the lyrics Joe wrote for this record were not something he would have written for himself and for the Clash, and so I think for everybody it was something new, not as new as it was for me, because I was like, where am I? What
Yes,
happened?
absolutely.
I'm not in Kansas anymore, except that I came from Missouri, but you get that.
It was a sort of a weird detour, really, in a different cul-de-sac in a different
Yeah,
place.
yes.
So
Something like
then,
that.
so
Yes.
then, with the momentum, you get the third album, Another Breath, comes up. I mean, again, there must have been quite a lot of kind of readjusting, and also there isn't that much time between it, just a couple of years, isn't there? So again, but it's a completely different band and quite a different sound again. So what was the
Right.
journey like for you on that point?
Well, it was, that was kind of a, I don't know, on the part of the people around me, because, another, Spirit of St. Louis was taken as, this was not a good idea. This didn't, represent you. It didn't follow up. So let's go back. But even further back, whatever your first record was a rock and roll record. So let's go further back and be even safer and do kind of a record with mainly pop on it. So that's pretty much what that was. And, they put me together with producer Vinnie Poncia, who had done, I think he had done Martha Reeves. He had done a lot of stuff like that. He had the bona fides of like a real, like a pop producer, but it sort of, it took it way in another direction. And
Yes.
we're actually doing in our show, we're doing this song called Boys in the Attic, which was co-written by Ellie Greenwich, by the great Ellie Greenwich. So that's a fantastic, girl group kind of sound. And I don't think I've ever performed it before, but we're doing it now with our band.
Yes, absolutely. This is going to be very exciting. And then there's,
Yeah, it's good.
but as with a lot of people, who've been in the music world, there is that kind of moment where things are going to go really beautifully, and you're thinking this is fantastic, and then the tricky bit. So was the sort of the mid-80s? Did you have a sort of existential moment of what happens next until sort of Pandora's
I
box comes
did.
in?
I think that after the Another Breath record, in spite of the fact that people said that's what they wanted, there was no support. And I felt, I don't know, it was kind of a lonely, slightly dispiriting kind of time. And I didn't even, I had a 3 record deal, but I didn't push to go any further after that. So I'm like, fine, I let me just be an employee. I don't need to be the boss and have my own record deal and, be going through all this, which isn't giving me a lot of joy. And so I went back and I was able to really jump into film and theater and Broadway and, all that kind of stuff for
Yes.
quite some time. Yeah.
Well, I know you were in sort of like in the 80s. It was from the great King of Comedy with Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro, which we loved, and then Fatal Attraction and Cocktail. So you obviously were still doing it. When you got the call from Jim to do Original Sin, did that feel quite a relief at that stage to sort of be sort of phoned again and said, "Oh, do you want to do another album of my material?"
Um, Sure, I don't know, relief, but I was very happy. I mean, I was in a show on Broadway at that time, so it was a little tricky, doing 8 shows a week, trying to, and it was a show called Me and My Girl. That was actually a British show that had been like from the 30s. So it was very sweet singing, very, almost music hall kind of stuff to go in and singing, with Steinman. But it all worked out. It was fun. It was great fun.
Yes, absolutely. And then, did you stick with sort of doing bits and pieces before you sort of came up with the sort of the follow-up album, which was About Time, which was obviously 2013? I just
I'm
wondered.
sorry, you broke. You cut out for a second. Did I
Yeah,
what?
I'm just saying that during that sort of from the 90s, there was quite a period of time before you brought out your next album, which is About Time. So
Right.
there'd been quite a gap. Had you still sort of performing music and still doing it, or were you focusing much more on sort of theatre and film at that stage?
No, I had 2 kids. I had a child in 1990 and 1994,
Right.
and so at that point, I just sort of I didn't do anything for a long time. And the longer I didn't do it, the more fear I had about going out there and say being in the theater or film or TV about auditioning. I got pretty phobic about all that. So I did things here and there, but I was not driven. I didn't have a lot of drive at that point. And then, but what turned it around was the show I did in '08 called Hercules in High Suburbia, where I met Paul Faglino because he wrote the music and words. And we did that show, and then we started working together, on putting together songs for a band, which eventually became songs for an album in 2013,
Right. My God, that
About
was.
Time record, right?
And he also at that stage, I mean, has got another impressive lineup of musicians around. Did that feel like you had somebody who sort of was around to sort of give you a bit of protection and sort of just sort of handle the tricky stuff so you could focus on the vocals?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know. And I still feel that way when I'm around Paul because he's very calm, and you always just think, everything's going to be okay, and he'll help me. He'll figure it out. And I always call him my weird little brother, but he's more like the big brother because, yeah, I mean, he's given me all this music and implemented it in a very comfortable, safe way for me.
Well, that's interesting. We all need someone to care for us occasionally, to just to sort of bat out the sort of weird stuff that goes on in life, which is tricky. And again, a fantastic band that you got assembled around you. So putting those songs together, did that feel like quite a journey for you, sort of in the studio again, sort of being not responsible, but having your name on the album and realizing this is going to be, not expose you, but sort of certainly put a bit of spotlight on you again after those, years or decade of being out.
A little less than I had hoped, because when we put that record out, I had never done anything without a record label or anything. So it was a bit of a shock. And then I just wasn't able to find people to make it happen. I got a press agent. I had a manager, for a few years, and none of these people panned out. So, and then and then in 2014, a year after that, I started going over to Europe, to the Netherlands and Belgium, which I've done like every year, at least a couple times a year, to do shows over there. So I was doing that. So, but then after we did this record, we hooked up with Randy, this
Right.
press agent, who's made all the difference. Getting me out there, getting more press attention than I can remember even getting back in the day. But I don't think that's true, because especially on that first record, I got a lot of good, great press, internationally. But
Yes.
he's terrific. So I feel like it's out there. It's definitely out there. Where the last one, I didn't feel it was so much, but now I do. And now I another guy like Charlie Roth, we're in his hands, because he's doing musical directing, and he's a brilliant arranger. So it feels like the pieces are in place really nicely at this point.
Yes. So you got dates, haven't you, coming up, or you've got at least one date? Do you have anything?
We did one in the end of October. Then we're doing this show in it's the 16th of December at a place called the Cutting Room here in New York.
Right.
And then after that, hopefully, I want to hook up with a booking person or somebody. It's I don't. Charlie is sort of working it, but I don't have a business person, as it was. But I do have 10 dates in Holland in January, which I have had to cancel twice before because of COVID. And now it looks like I might have to cancel it again, because it looks like over there things aren't good.
No.
Again.
They were getting a bit tricky. The UK are okay. We're just being very relaxed about the whole COVID thing. It's all back to normal here in a strange sort of way. I don't know. It could all go weird again, but it seems like it's I don't know. I mean, it's a crazy time. But you're theoretically 2022. You're going to be playing some dates, hopefully in Europe.
Yes, in January.
In January, in fact, which is frighteningly quite close.
Which is soon, we're talking, 6 or 7 weeks from now. And I just read today that they were rioting in the street because of COVID restrictions in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I know the news is all about that. I just thought, oh dear, I didn't realize you had a tour lined up at the same time, which is annoying.
Yeah.
This has just come to sort of annoy us all this moment. And how do you kind of keep your vocal in such good condition? Because obviously, every vocalist must be sort of relying on this kind of instrument. And do you sort of have to practice a lot to keep it?
Oh yeah. Yes. But my thing is that I don't practice. I don't do anything. Then I'm like, oh, I have a gig. So for like the 7 or 8 weeks before the gig, I practice every day and really, work out and get the muscle back in shape, which is before our thing in October, which is what I did. And it really paid off.
Yes, my
Mostly,
God.
yeah.
And if you could have said something like to your 16, 18-year-old who was starting out in this kind of interesting world of music and entertainment, is there any kind of key little things you'd have just said, oh, I've got a few things I love to whisper, something that you might say, yes, keep doing that, or something that, like, oh, I'd watch out for that, or I would really do something else, not do something else. But I just wondered what some kind of pearls of wisdom that has sort of happened.
Trust yourself, I mean, because when I did it, I think it was early on. It was the male dominance in the field, and I might have gotten um, waylaid by other people's opinions. Not even as young as I was, I had instincts. I'm sure I had instincts that at times maybe I should have relied on more, or not be such an idiot. Don't be such an idiot. Like, oh, I have a boyfriend. Oh, I'll go run over here. But, forget it. When you're young, you think everything, is going to last forever and this is it. Well, it's not. You gotta think about yourself. If you want to be an artist, you need to be selfish. You can't put yourself in the back seat.
Yes.
You have to be selfish, in that way, in that trust your instincts, trust your talent. Don't let yourself be intimidated. And now, because nobody intimidates me now, I don't care. Which is like, and I think I'm better now than I ever was.
Yes.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know.
Does it slightly make you cringe remembering what it was like in the sort of the 70s and the 80s, in that sort of the environment that you were having to work in, thinking, my God, the things that happened would have just not been allowed to happen today?
In terms of
Well,
what?
just because you mentioned, and it's kind of quite obvious, I suppose, because more things keep coming out, the male-dominated culture that happened. I was talking to a musician who's also is a bit of a journalist, and was just saying it was a very, very male-dominated world being a journalist, as well as the music industry. All the the bosses, the engineers, the producers, a lot of musicians. There weren't an awful lot of women around, and
Right.
not always that well looked after or given that much kind of respect. And I just wondered if when you look back, some of it makes you cringe. What you become.
Well, no, I never felt I was put in any really, really uncomfortable or dangerous position. So I let myself be put in any kind of anything like that, any kind of abusive situations, anything like that.
Yes,
Luckily.
I just wondered, just like attitudes or anything, in that world, because you recorded on Meat Loaf's last album, didn't you? I believe a song called "Braver Than We Are." Was that a interesting and nice experience to sort of have that opportunity to sing again with him?
It was nice, yes, but that's when I sort of at that point started my love affair with Carla. We had just sort of started talking before that at this evening of Jim's stuff, and then right after that it was when the meat stuff happened, and it was nice to be in the studio with him. It was there was nothing crazy about it. It was all very grown up and civilized. It was nice.
Yes, I mean it is quite amazing that to these kind of circles or these kind of moments get connected, don't they? From one year to one decade to another. So it must be quite nice that happens. But anyway, look, it's all good stuff. But thank you ever so much. And I'm really sorry about that time business. I should have double checked and not just read the email. Went, 10 o'clock.
No.
I put it on my calendar.
Yeah, I didn't really, look past 4 o'clock, where, it was like 10 o'clock your time. Because obviously it's 5 hours difference, but yeah. But
It's
Randy's
fine.
very good. And he has other good points. Maybe not figuring out time zones, but otherwise he's excellent.
No, he's lovely. He's absolutely
He's great.
amazing.
Yeah.
And he's been a delight. But anyway, look, thank you ever so much for giving me your time for this. This has been amazing. I'll send him a link to the interview, and you can always use it elsewhere. But all the best for the album, and I've really enjoyed listening to it over the last couple of weeks, and it's been fantastic. And also, actually,
thank you very much, David.
Coming back to your other solo albums as well, which has been fascinating. And yes, it's been good. But luckily, we're all walking and talking and got our marbles. So, yeehaw.
Yeah, man.
It's all good. It's good. Anyway, look, have a lovely evening and take care.
You too.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, David.
Cheers.
You
Bye-bye.
take care. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
I know that was that's how you say goodbye in a very concise way. I love leaving that bit in because it always makes me smile. Anyway, a massive thank you to Ellen Foley for giving me the time for that interview. If you want to know any more information, she has got various websites and presence on Twitter and Facebook, I do believe. But anyway, Google, that's the word, isn't it? And this is the C86 show, David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me for some nice reason, you can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, just do C86 show and you'll find me. All these interviews have been archived. You can find those on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. Do check them out. Anyway, have a great week. Stay safe.